About a year ago, my most anticipated game of all time came out, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Since then, I've talked about it in plenty of videos, played it for countless hours, and I've even put up a review on it. So at this point, you're probably wondering what I'm doing talking about it yet again in another one of its own videos. Since I've made that review, a lot has changed, and I feel like this has been a similar experience to what other Breath of the Wild lovers felt. The purpose of this video is to go over the reception of Tears over the past year, and hopefully close the book on how I truly feel about this game I waited so long for. This doesn't exactly mean I'm never going to talk about it again, but, well, you get the idea. I think the first thing we need to address when it comes to Tears of the Kingdom is the expectations. This was following up what was widely regarded to be the greatest game of all time. Expanding on a normal game is hard enough, but following up Breath of the Wild seemed to be an impossible task. Regardless, I and many others were hyped out of their minds for this. I counted down the days of this game's release before it even had a release date. I dreamt about playing this game before they showed any gameplay. Every direct I prayed that we get a sliver of news of the new Zelda. And the funny thing is about this waiting period is that when the game actually did come out, it was pretty much everything I wanted it to be. I hadn't really thought about what would be in the game, rather than just thinking about how fun reliving Breath of the Wild would be in a new form. But reliving Breath of the Wild is actually what I think Tears' biggest downfall is. When Nintendo announced that they would be reusing the land of Hyrule, a lot of people were skeptical of how that would work, given that the main draw of Breath of the Wild was exploring a new world. I figured that as long as they changed up a lot of the places and gave us new mechanics, that would be enough to have a blast. Which is kinda true. But the problem that lies with this is that a lot of the great moments in Tears when you're traveling across this wide open landscape are moments that you already experienced in Breath of the Wild. This kind of undermines it when you know that it's the exact same experience you've already felt but in a whole new game. And when it comes to changes to the overworld, it does kind of feel like Breath of the Wild 1.0 rather than 2.0. It is cool to run around seeing what's changed with all the beloved locations, but for a whole new game, I feel like we did need a new world to truly feel like its own thing. Because sometimes I would see a cool looking thing in the distance, but not bother because it seemed to be close enough to what it used to be. But honestly, the overworld not being changed as much wouldn't be as much of an issue for me if the next two things I'm going to talk about were better. As you know, the overworld is only one of 3 layers to Hyrule. 2 of the big additions to the game were the Depths and the Sky Islands. These are 2 things I was really looking forward to, and they're super cool, but I don't think they were utilized to their full potential. The first real area you're in the game is a Sky Island, and man does it set a good impression. It's dense with tons of different enemies, biomes, and hidden areas. It's a perfect follow-up to the iconic Great Plateau, and provides a really fun place to get players used to the new changes. But the problem with coming in so hot is that after you leave the Great Sky Island, you never get to one as good again. There's certainly some cool dungeons and challenges in the sky, and they're a gorgeous place to relax and get away from it all, but they don't provide as much excitement as I hoped they would. Once I've completed one, there's really no reason to go back, which is partially because they're hard to get to, but still. This is also a big problem the Depths have. When Tears of the Kingdom first came out, I had a lot of fun with the Depths. Not only were they scary and suspenseful, but it was really satisfying to slowly brighten it all up one light at a time. I remember I spent multiple play sessions in a row just in the Depths, but after that I never came back. There's no reason to. Unlike the overworld, there's almost no notable structures anywhere. Apart from a dungeon in the Gliak Den, there's only the occasional mine or Yiga clan hideout, and finding these gets old pretty quickly. There's really nothing to do down here but farm for Zonite sometimes. It would have been really cool to put some ancient abandoned villages or towns, and maybe we'd have to piece together what happened to them or something, but nothing like that ever happens. It felt like something they threw in within the last couple of months but didn't have time to put anything cool down there. The concept of the Depths and the Skylands are so cool, but I feel like they weren't used to their fullest potential, and that really sucks knowing that this is the last time we'll see this world. Another issue I had is with the story and missions. In regards to the memory flashbacks and Tears, I don't think the format works as well as it did in Breath of the Wild. I think the problem with both is that you can easily not do them in order and get a major plot point spoiled for you. I skipped every cutscene and rewatched them once I had all of them, but even that was flawed because some cutscenes start with the spoiler. I just think it would have been a lot better off if it gave you every location one by one as you got every memory. But even so, the content within them just isn't as good as Breath of the Wild in my opinion. In that game, I was engrossed in the champions and their dysfunctional relationship with each other, and even though you don't see a lot of them, you get surprisingly connected with them. This is also helped by the fact that during each Divine Beast they help you out, and you get their ability once you beat it. The characters you meet in Tears of the Kingdom aren't as interesting, although that's probably just me. I just find characters who are so noble and unflawed to be not as interesting. As much as I liked Minoru, Rauru, and Sonia, they just weren't that compelling because they all felt the same, just different versions of perfect. And it was weird that you never interact with the sages. They were kinda just there, you learned nothing about them. I also thought the missions could have been better. For at least the start, the core structure of the story is similar to Breath of the Wild, where you have to go to every corner of the map and team up with the hero to rid the area of harm. And honestly, I do like the missions better than Breath of the Wild, but I do think they could have been better for the amount of time between the games. The missions take relatively the same approach as the previous game, where you do some stuff around the area and then go to the dungeon with your partner, but I would have liked it if they were a bit longer and more cryptic this time around. To help you understand what I mean, take the DLC from Breath of the Wild, Champion's Ballad. In that, they bring you back to every corner of the map with new challenges, but they make you find them in a song with a little marker on a picture. Because of how much you've explored the world of Hyrule, you can hear the message in the song and see the picture and figure out where the challenge is. I would have liked if the missions had you running all around the area solving mysteries about what was happening here and having to piece together clues. You could use your knowledge of the area from the many hours you played Breath of the Wild to help solve these mysteries. The Zora's Domain mission kind of does this, where you have to go to different people that leads you to different areas, but I think it could have leaned even further into the intrigue. Even so, the missions have improved a lot. I like the large variety of challenges to face and the different bosses along the way. I just think this was a perfect time to capitalize on people's knowledge of the world. This, of course, comes with its own problems because not everyone has played Breath of the Wild, and if they have, there's a good chance it wasn't as much as most. Or maybe they forgot a lot about the areas, but I still would have liked it. Beyond the base story, I also have problems with how the Zelda team addressed the lore from Breath of the Wild. In that game, Sheikah Tech was used a ton. It was the main thing. The Shrine of Resurrection, the Guardians, the Shrines, the Towers, the Divine Beasts, it was all Sheikah Tech, and it was really cool. I loved how much the futuristic technology contrasted against the primitive world to make every side of it intriguing. And I kinda wish they built on it further in the sequel, but they don't. And that's okay. If that's not the path I want to go down, then I'm fine with that. But they pretty much just erased it from history. Apart from the slate and the towers, there's no mention of it, as if it just vanished out of thin air. The shrine and towers can be explained, but where do the guardians and divine beasts go? I was really looking forward to what the divine beasts were up to now. And what about the shrine of resurrection? There's no actual way the Sheikah Tech in there would be removed. You can't do it, physically. And it wouldn't be too much of a problem if they at least addressed it, but they don't. I have no idea why. It just seemed like the team got tired of doing stuff with it, then just threw it out without a second thought and replaced it with Zonai. And from the sound of it, that seems like what happened. After the game was released, the team said in an interview that they don't really pay attention to Zelda lore because it could hold back good ideas from happening. And in a way I respect that, but no it doesn't. They could have easily come up with the line that a character says explaining where all of it went. But instead it feels like this game is some alternate reality to Breath of the Wild, where Sheikah Tech never existed. And this is a shame because the Zelda lore is really cool, and it's fun to learn about it and add on to it. But it makes it a little less special knowing that the creators don't really care. It all just seemed really lazy. By this point, I'm about, 8, 9 or so minutes into tearing this game apart. But I think it's important to know that this is my top 10 favorite games of all time. Number 6 to be exact. So clearly, I really love this game. Which is exactly how I think other people like me feel. When you have a sequel so similar to your favorite game ever, it's going to be a lot like your favorite game ever. And if we're being real, Tears of the Kingdom is better than Breath of the Wild. If you had someone play Tears first, then Breath of the Wild, they'd probably just find it underwhelming. Everything about Tears is better, but it's that exact similarity in which some moments don't feel as good. When you're exploring the world, it obviously feels really good, but the moment is kind of soured by the fact that you've done this before. This is why the best parts in Tears of the Kingdom are the new stuff, most notably the new abilities. Ultra Hand is really what changed the game. It's one of the only things that makes this game feel like a sequel. It perfectly captures the essence of these two games, and that's the idea of infinite possibilities at your fingertips. Even the things I was talking about earlier, like the missions and the new areas, are really cool. It's just hard to follow up the greatness of its predecessor. And I think that was the biggest challenge for me in reviewing this game, is how much of Breath of the Wild should I take into consideration when talking about it and grading it. For a long time, I thought that you should view a game in its own right, and try not to take into consideration other titles and stuff as much as possible. But it's hard when I'm this connected to a property not to think about these things, especially when the game is this highly acclaimed. I often find myself thinking about the shortcomings I've been talking about in this whole video, and wonder whether it really is my top 10. And then I think about the game itself, and how amazing it is, and how much fun I had, and remind myself that it definitely is. Even though a lot of it was carried over from Breath of the Wild, it still is Breath of the Wild. Doing it the second time over is still an incredible time, it's just complicated. I know this seemed like just a video for me to make to rip on Tears of the Kingdom, but I think it's more of a testament to how long it can take for you to form a strong opinion on something as big as this. I'm not sure if I never noticed these things when the game first came out because I didn't want to, or because the hype was so huge that I was blinded by it. It's probably a bit of both. But no matter what my thoughts on it, Tears will always be a cornerstone for sequels on how to improve and misstep from the earlier entry. For every game's grade I think about, This is the one I'm probably confused about the most, and I'm not sure if I'll ever find a good spot for this game in my mind. Maybe I'll just keep making a new video about Tears of the Kingdom every year for its anniversary. But I think the best way to help my confusion is by expressing it to you guys, because I know a lot of you probably feel the same way. Or maybe you love this game way more than Breath of the Wild, then in that case I'm happy for you. I'm actually very jealous of you, because I wish I felt that way. As time goes on, I'm interested in seeing where this game falls in the wider narrative of games, but until that point, the best thing we can do is just keep talking about it. So please, leave your thoughts about it in the comments below because I'd love to see what people think about it. And I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.